It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Japan's players. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin, and today we'll be looking at Japan's squad for the 2022 World Cup. This preamble is going to be the same for every mediacast we do for players. So those familiar with it can jump ahead to around 4 minutes, three and a half minutes to when we begin talking about the team. The times for each section are near the bottom of the show notes. And for you YouTube watchers, those include a timestamp that you can click on to go directly to that point. For those looking for a quick version of this, you can skip to near the end of the mediacast, the last 10 minutes where we summarize the likely starters. Just prior to that, with about 25 minutes remaining, we have some discussion on the squad, the main issues with the squad, their club affiliations, some statistics, and an overview of new, injured, and outgoing players. And we'll also be editing this mediacast into a shorter version for those who are just looking for an overview. For those who are looking for a deeper dive, you've come to the right place. We go through the players and how likely each one is to make the final squad, and we explain why we think so and give some information on each player's history and standing with the squad. The way we do this is first by organizing the players into their designated positions. It should be noted that these are a bit artificial, since players don't always play in their coded positions. Nevertheless, it's a good way to organize the discussion. Then we go through the players and share some of the data we've collected in our soccer files, and using that data, try to predict how likely the player is to make the team, based mostly on their recent participation, but a couple of other factors as well. We categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seems to be off the squad. We also mention big players who have recently retired and make note of any who are currently injured. And we finish by a quick run through of the squad again and try to determine which players are going to be the starters. Okay, now for those following on YouTube, we run a very simple graphic where we list the names, and you can actually see the players' names in print, as it were. And it's the same broadcast for the audio podcast. So we're going to try to repeat the names a few times to help listeners familiarize themselves with the players' names so that you know who's stepping onto the field. And perhaps you can impress your friends by telling them some of the things you've learned about the players here. And that's as much as we can do to this point. But as the rosters are being published, we're going to do an update episode on teams and players. For the players, that will essentially be going over our predictions, updating them based on the games played to that point. So they have a couple of games in September, maybe a couple of friendlies before the tournament that we can fit in. And we will reveal which players were selected for the preliminary roster and the final roster. So we're going to do that when the final rosters are published. So keep your eye out for those, probably in mid-November. All right, let's move on to talking about Japan. And today I'm wearing samurai blue, but my poverty of shirts prevent it from being a Japan shirt. And so I go to my default Cardiff shirt, but at least I have the right color. Okay, let's talk about previous podcast takeaways. So we did do a podcast when the final round of Asian qualifying began. We did a podcast on the teams there, and we've also done team podcasts for the World Cup. So Group E, which Japan is in, there's a full-length version and a short version there, and here are some of the points coming out of that. So Japan is prone to a couple of lapses. I'll detail this one and then tease a couple of them and kind of flesh them out at the end of the podcast. But for this one, I'll mention they had an opening home loss to Oman in the last round of qualifying. That was a bit of a shocker. And then just as they were on the verge of seizing first place in qualifying, they uncharacteristically lost to Vietnam at home, and that cost them first place. But it is promising, though, that they did beat Australia twice in the qualifications. And actually, these lapses were to weak teams, so they're not playing any weak teams here, so not really an issue here. Okay, next one. I'm going to leave this till the end, but they do suffer a little bit of first game jitters. We'll tell you more about that at the end. Also, they have a couple of odd strategies in tournaments that we've noticed. Another thing we'll detail at the end. We're just teasing you with it now. And this one we will detail. They played in the 2019 Copa America, and I actually was surprised they sent kind of a B team there. They did have a few veterans playing on that squad, but kind of a lot of B team players. So at first I was surprised. Then I thought, oh, okay, well, hopefully they're developing their bench for the future. However, only 5 players emerged from that squad to become kind of considerations for this squad, and none of them were at the will be at the definite level as we go through our players. There were 3 kind of likely candidates and 2 possible candidates. So perhaps that's enough, but I hoped actually the experience would be more valuable to Japan and give players a bit more experience with South American teams. However, they did kind of get that experience. A few of the veterans who were on the team got that experience. They also played a couple of friendlies against South American teams. So there we have it. But all in all, that 2019 Copa America, perhaps a bit less fruitful than expected. Let's take a look at their formations over the period we're talking about, but we're going to add the Asian Cup 2019. It was quite a while ago now, but it's still good to look at. So in the Asian Cup in 2019, they started in the group stage with a 4-2-3-1 format. That's a fairly attacking lineup. 4 at the back, 2 kind of central defensive-minded midfielders, 3 attacking midfielder, and 1 forward. But they went even more defensive. Well, it looks like more attacking, but actually their style of play was more defensive, especially in games 4 and 5 against Saudi Arabia and Vietnam. But anyway, in the final stages of the Asian Cup, it was a 4-4-2 formation. So I suppose a little bit more attacking on paper, but as I said, not necessarily in performance. With that takes us to World Cup qualifying. We're kind of skipping the first round of qualification and not really adding that. We do when we consider recent participation for the players. We consider how many first round games they played also. But in terms of this formation discussion, we just looked at the second round. So they went back to that 4-2-3-1 formation, and then went to a 4-3-3 formation, which they had for 3 games, not 3 games in a row there. And then a 4-1-4-1 formation that was in 3 games toward the end, so games 7, 8, and 9. And one time used a 4-4-2 formation. So quite a bit of variety in there, but perhaps not as much as it seems, because in every case it's pretty much a 4-5-1 formation. So 4 at the back all the way through, and 1 forward in 6 of the games at least. And 2 or 3 forwards in a couple of those formations. Then they played 4 friendlies in June 2022. And that was a 4-3-3 formation all the way through. So I'm going to roughly say that seems to be the formation, their preferred formation. But perhaps not, because I think it's possibly a bit too attacking for for the quality of teams they'll be facing in the World Cup. Anyway, when we go through the squad, we'll be talking about where players lined up in these formations. So it makes it a bit complicated that they had various formations, but we'll try to navigate our way through that. All right, let's take a look at the squad then, player by player, beginning with the manager. And we start with Hajime Moriyasu. He is their manager. And he was their manager for the 2019 Asian Cup. So he's been there for a while now. Also took them through the Copa America there in 2019. And he was a player for Japan himself from 1987 to 2002, and he was with the national team from 1992 to 96 with 35 caps and 1 goal. And he played in the 1992 Asian Cup and the Confederation Cup in 1995. So he's been with Japan since 2018. He was actually with the under-23 team before that and moved up, and only coached one club, actually, Sanfrecce Hiroshima, from 2012 to 17. Nevertheless, he has been their manager now for 4 years. So let's move on to goalkeepers, and we'll begin by kind of naming the candidates, and then we'll go through them one by one, and then we'll kind of summarize the position, how the position has played out over the last while. So first candidate is Shuichi Gonda, and the next, Daniel Schmidt. Sorry, Gonda is a definite player, and Daniel Schmidt likely, and Eiji Kawashima also likely, and Koji Miyoshi seems to be off the squad. We have several of those actually. Kosuke Nakamura, Shusaku Nishikawa, Keisuke Osako, and finally Masaki Higashiguchi. All seem to be off the squad, so perhaps we'll deal with those fairly quickly at the end. But let's take a look at Shuichi Gonda. And he started 14 of their 20 games since 2021. So the period we're going to look at here is their games since the beginning of 2021. He started 14 of their 20 games and was on the bench for 5 of those. So just one game he was not selected for. Shuichi Gonda has been with Japan since 2010 and has 33 caps and 0 goals. And he's 33 years old. And he plays for Shimizu S-Pulse in Japan. A recent move, actually. He was with Portimonense in Portugal from 2019 to 22, although he was loaned to Shimizu S-Pulse in that last year of that, and some other clubs in Japan there. And during his long period with FC Tokyo, which was his first club, actually his youth club and then his first club, he was loaned to Horn in Austria in 2016. So in terms of tournaments, he's been around for a while, but for the Asian Cup in 2011 and Confederations Cup 2013 and in the World Cup 2014, he was just the backup keeper. Kawashima, who is still here, was the starter in those tournaments. And he didn't make the final cut for the 2015 Asian Cup or wasn't selected for the 2018 World Cup, but he made a comeback and was the starter in the 2019 Asian Cup. He didn't play in the Copa America in 2019. So now he seems a very firm starter, I guess, from the 2019 Asian Cup. And Shuichi Gonda we'll probably expect to see in net on the first game against Germany. Daniel Schmidt is a likely candidate, and he started 2 of their 20 games since 2021. He was on the bench for 10, but not selected for 8 matches. So he has been with Japan since 2018 and has 11 caps. He's 30 years old. And he plays for Sint-Truidense in Belgium. That's a bit of an interesting case. Sint-Truidense has 6 Japanese players on their roster, so it's like a little gathering of Japan, a little patch of Japan at Sint-Truidense in Belgium. Prior to that, he played for Vigolta Sende in Japan and other teams, all in Japan, throughout his career. He was actually born in the USA and moved to Japan at the age of 2. And his first tournament was the 2019 Asian Cup, where he was the backup keeper. He appeared only in game 3, which was a B team game. He also didn't go to the Copa America 2019. And Daniel Schmidt looks like the second string keeper for now. And EJ Kawashima is the veteran keeper that we talked about, who seems to be just in a backup role now, but 38 years old he is. So still going. He started 4 of their 20 games since 2021, and he was on the bench for 14 of those. So just 2 matches that he was not selected for. So he's been with Japan since 2008 and has 95 caps. And as I said, 38 years old. But he's playing for Strasbourg in France since 2018, and he played for Metz in France and Dundee in Scotland and Standard Liège in Belgium. So he's been around. Also Liège in Belgium. He moved from Kawasaki Frontale in Japan in 2010 over to Belgium and has been in Europe ever since. For the 2007 Asian Cup, he was the backup keeper himself, so on the roster but saw no action. Yoshikatsu Kawaguchi was the starting keeper there, but he became the starting keeper for the 2010 World Cup and kept the role. I won't name all the tournaments, but he kept the role all the way until the 2018 World Cup. But then he wasn't selected for the 2019 Asian Cup. Perhaps he was being saved for the 2019 Copa America because he played in that one in the summer of 2019. He was actually the backup keeper in that tournament, but he gained the starting keeper, the starting position. It was Keisuke Osako, who is now off the team, who was the starting keeper in the first game there, but Kawashima took over. Okay, so probably the third string keeper there, but a good backup keeper to have. And the rest of the candidates are all players who seem to be off the squad, so I'll deal with them fairly quickly here. Koji Miyoshi last appeared for the national team on the bench in October 2021. And he only has 5 caps and 2 goals. Plays for Royal Antwerp in Belgium, having moved. That was his second spell. Oh, no, it wasn't. He was loaned to them in 2019. So moved from Japan to Belgium. He was on the Copa America 2019 squad. So the third keeper there. But otherwise seems to be off the squad here. Kosuke Nakamura last appeared for the national team on the bench in June 2021. And he was a backup keeper for the World Cup in 2018, but he didn't see any action. And he has just 4 caps with Japan between 2017 and 2019. And he's with Portimonense in Portugal. That's the second time we've heard that name. In Portugal, he moved from Japan in 2020 over to Portugal. Shusaku Nishikawa also seems to be off the squad. He actually did return after a more than 3-year absence in March 2021. And he appeared on the bench for 2 games and then wasn't called up anymore. But he does have a bit of a history with Japan, Shusaka Nishikawa, and he actually was with the team from 2009 and had 31 caps. Now he's 36 years old. He plays in Japan. And He played in the 2011 Asian Cup as a backup keeper, and actually in the 2013 Confederations Cup, the 2014 World Cup, and the 2015 Asian Cup, a backup keeper in all of them, but not selected for any of the tournaments after that. But did pop up his head in March 2021 briefly, but not enough really to make a bid for the final squad, it seems. Keisuke Osaka is the next, seems to be off the squad. He returned after a 2.5-year absence in June 2022, starting none of the remaining 4 games. He was subbed in for 1 game, but then not selected for the last 3 matches. So maybe I should have him as a possible, but unlikely, because as I said, he was the starting keeper for the 2019 Copa America, but then after game 1 was replaced by Kawashima, Keisuke Osako. So maybe has a slightly better chance than the others. I'll move him up to possible, but unlikely, since he did appear recently in June. Finally, Masaki Higashiguchi last appeared for the national team on the bench in March 2019. So very slim chance of getting in. He's played in Japan his whole career, but he was on the roster for the 2015 Asian Cup, 2018 World Cup, and the 2019 Asian Cup. So the backup keeper there. So does have a bit of history with the team. Only 8 caps though, and is 38 years old now. So, 36 years old. So seems to be off the squad. So we have 3 real candidates here. 1 definite, 2 likely, but all of the others seem to be off the squad except for Keisuke Osako, who I moved up to possible but unlikely. So it seems pretty clear that it's going to be these 3 goalies going to the cup. Shiuchi Gonda was the goalkeeper in the Asian Cup in 2019, except Daniel Schmidt replaced him in a B team game, game 3 there. Gonda was the starting keeper throughout all 10 games of the second round of World Cup qualifying, except for the last game where Kawashima came in to replace him. And in the 4 friendlies at the end, it was each of them, Gonda, Schmidt, and Kawashimi, playing 1, and Schmidt played 2, actually. So perhaps giving those backups a little bit of experience. And 2 of those games were actually against South American teams, and the other were in a summer tournament called the Kirin Cup. I consider them friendlies, although I think the game against Ghana was actually not that friendly. Anyway, let's move on to talk about defenders, and we'll begin with central defenders here. And we have Maya Yoshida still going, to my surprise. We consider him actually a definite candidate. And Takahiro Tomiyasu, a likely candidate. And Hiroki Ito, also likely. And Naomichi Ueda, a possible candidate. Shinosuke Nakatani, a possible but unlikely candidate. And veteran Gen Soji seems to be off the team here. And Shinosuke Hatanaka, another player who seems to be off the team. So, yes, we saw that Japan goes with a 4-man backline, so 2 central defenders all the time. And we'll talk about how it shaped up after we've introduced the players. But Maya Yoshida is the one we begin with, and a true veteran of the squad. We were surprised even in the 2019 Asian Cup. No, I don't think we were surprised he made it to that, but we did think that would be his last tournament. But still going strong. He started 15 of their 20 games, since 2021, and he was injured for 2 and not selected for 3 others. So he has been with the team since 2010. He's actually the captain, and he has 121 caps and 12 goals, about 10% scoring ratio, which is pretty good for a central defender. He comes up for headers, and he is 34 years old. Yeah, certainly not slowing down. He recently moved to Schalke in Germany in 2022 and was with Sampdoria in Italy before that. And I remember him mostly from Southampton in England, where he played from 2012 to 20. And he had come from Venlo in the Netherlands. So actually just spent the first couple of years of his senior career with Nagoya Grampus in Japan. That was his youth club also. So his first tournament was the 2011 Asian Cup, and he was a starter in that cup, and basically a starter in all tournaments all the way up to the 2019 Asian Cup, where he was the champion. I might say that in the 2014 World Cup, he scored sorry, that was an injury time winning goal, but it was actually in qualifying rather than in the World Cup itself. Anyways, Maya Yoshida, a real presence at the back, and a player to look out for. Let's move on to the likely players. Takahiro Tomiyasu. Started 7 of their 20 games, a surprisingly low number there for a Premier League player. He was started 7 of their 20 games. On the bench for 1, he was out with 2 separate injuries, but just for 4 games, and not selected for the 8 others. So actually, up until June, he hadn't been on the field for Japan since November 2021, and I suspected he was injured, and I kind of still do, because I feel like at the start of the season he wasn't a consideration for Arsenal, even though he wasn't listed as an injured player. So I wonder if there was some kind of a problem with him. But anyway, I think he just started playing with Arsenal at the time of this recording. That is his club. He's been with them since 2021 and was with Bologna in Italy before that, and with Sint-Truidens in Belgium, that team that seems to gather Japanese players. He moved to Belgium from Japan in 2017. And he was part of the squad for the Asian Cup 2019. That was his first tournament, where he started and finished all games and kind of developed his relationship at the back there with Maya Yoshida. They've basically been playing together for most of the games during this period. He also, unlike a lot of players, did go to the Copa America 2019. Maya Yoshida didn't. And he started and finished all 3 of their games there. So one of the kind of senior squad members to play in that cup. So Takahiro Tomiyasu, a likely candidate. And let's go on to Hiroki Ito. So Hiroki Ito got his first cap in June 2022, and he started 3 of their 4 remaining games. That was when Tomiyasu seemed to be off the squad there, and he was on the bench for 1 other. So he has been with Japan just since 2022, and he had those 3 caps and is 23 years old. And he plays for Stuttgart in Germany. That's a recent move in 2022 from Jubilo Iwatu in Japan. He was actually loaned to Stuttgart in 2021-22 also. So Jubilo Iwata is his youth club as well. So, and the first club he played for. So Hiroki Ito looks like a likely candidate for this cup, and a promising candidate down the road for Japan. Naomichi Ueda started 2 of their 20 games since 2021. He was subbed in for 1, but he was on the bench for 9. Not selected, though, for 8 matches, including the last 4. So Naomichi Ueda has been with Japan since 2015, and he has 16 caps and 1 goal. and is 28 years old. And he plays for Nîmes in France since 2021, and was with Cercle Brugge in Belgium before that, and moved over from Japan in 2018. He had played for the Kashima Antlers in Japan for 5 years there. So Naomichi Ueda's first tournament was the 2015 Asian Cup, where he was actually cut from the preliminary roster and then called back in to replace an injured player at Suso Uchida. But he didn't see any action in the 2015 Asian Cup, nor in the 2018 World Cup, though he was called up for that one. He didn't make the squad for the 2019 Asian Cup, but he did go to the 2019 Copa America, where he started and finished all games here. So just played a couple of games, World Cup qualifying games as a central defender. And I should actually go back to Hiroki Ito to mention that even though he's coded as a central defender, all three of his starts were as a left back. Hiroki Ito. Okay, let's continue on to Shinosuke Nakatana, and he is possible but unlikely. Oh, sorry, I've just made a little mistake on my notes here. Shinosuke Nakatana got his first appearance on the bench in March 2021 and started 2 of their remaining 20 games and was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 4. However, there were 13 matches that he wasn't selected for, including the last 6 matches. So since 2021, he has 5 caps and is 26 years old and plays for Nagoya Grampus in Japan. But we consider him unlikely to make the squad. Okay, Gen Shoji is a veteran. He started 2 of their 20 games since 2021 and was on the bench for 3, but then wasn't selected for 15 others, and that includes the last 12 matches. So he seems to be off the squad here. A veteran, maybe not as much of a veteran as I thought he was. He's been with Japan since 2015 and has 20 caps and 1 goal, and he's 30 years old. Perhaps I considered him a veteran because he was one of the starting central defenders in 3 of the 4 2018 World Cup games. So I thought he'd been around a bit longer. He was around actually for the 2015 Asian Cup. He was selected but didn't see any action, just on the bench there. But as I said, he was a starter in the 2018 World Cup. However, after that, he hasn't appeared, so didn't make the squad for the 2019 Asian Cup and didn't go to the Copa America that year either. So yeah, certainly not the veteran I thought he was. Just the name is very familiar to me, though. Finally, we have Shinosuke Hatanaka, and he started none of their games since the 2021 but he was subbed in early on. Basically, he was subbed in for a game and on the bench for a game. And he also played in the East Asian Football Championship in the summer of 2022. So actually after the friendlies we've talked about. I've decided not to include that, though, because it seems, although a couple of the, starting first team players did play in that tournament, which Japan and Korea, especially in the past, took very seriously. They usually sent their best team to that, but now it seems to be more of a kind of a B team or perhaps an under 23 team thing. So I'm not really going to include it in the count here because most of the senior team didn't play in it. Anyway, Shinosuke Hatanaka did play in that, but not really for the senior team. So we consider him not a candidate here. Okay, let's go back and summarize the position of central defender. So actually it is kind of complicated with a few players coming in and out. But to simplify things, I'll say Yoshida and Tomiyasu settled as a pairing shortly into the Asian Cup, and that continued through most of World Cup qualifying games until Tomiyasu was injured. It got a bit complicated after that. They oddly kind of put on two new players, Taniguchi and Itakura, for game 8. So Yoshida wasn't used either. Put on two new players, and then those two players, Taniguchi and Itakura, basically alternated playing alongside Yoshida after that for games 9 and 10 of World Cup qualifying and also in the friendlies. So getting a bit of experience in Tomiyasu's absence there. All right, well, that is central defenders. Let's move on to left backs. And we have a definite candidate in veteran Yuto Nagatomo. So he's a definite. And possible candidate in Sho Sasaki. And then a player who seems to be off the team, Roya Ogawa. So just 3 candidates to deal with here. And Yuto Nagatomo is a left back, but actually he did play right back in 2 of the last friendlies there, but is really a staple at left back. He started 13 of their 20 games since 2021, and he was on the bench for 5 others and injured for 2. So always called up when fit. So he's been with Japan, Yuto Nagatomo, since 2008 and has 137 caps and 4 goals and is 36 years old. And he plays for FC Tokyo in Japan, but he just returned from Europe there. He played for Marseille in France and Galatasaray and Inter Milan. So a very storied player. Having moved from FC Tokyo in 2010, so now he's kind of gone back to his first club, suggesting that he's moving into retirement, as his age would suggest too. But still going strong, still the starter. It looks like here. His first tournament was the 2010 World Cup, where he was a starter. And I won't go through all the tournaments, but he was a starter in all of them, all the way up to the 2019 Asian Cup. A very steady player there. He didn't go to the 2019 Copa America, but did start and finish all games in the Asian Cup there, and 13 of their 20 games here. So Yuto Nagatomo, one of their steadiest long-term players. Sho Sasaki is a possible candidate. He started 4 of their 20 games since 2021, and he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 6. So not selected for 11 of those 20 matches. And Sho Sasaki plays for has been with Japan since 2018 and has 15 caps and 2 goals. He's no spring chicken himself at 33 years old. He plays for Sanfrecce Hiroshima in Japan, and his career has been in Japan. He's been with Sanfrecce Hiroshima since 2015. The 2019 Asian Cup was his first tournament. He was a sub there, but did appear in Game 3, a B-team game. However, he didn't go to the Copa America like most of the senior team. He did score one of their goals in qualifying for this World Cup, one of their 58 goals. Sho Sasaki seems to be the backup left back there, although he did line up as a right back in the Asian Cup there, so a bit of movement on the lines there. Finally, we have Roya Ogawa, and we have him as seemingly off the squad. He got his first cap in March 2021 and started 2 of their remaining games. Remaining 20 games, subbed in for 2, but not selected for the last 14 matches. So seemed to get a chance at being on the squad, and then drifted off the squad. So let's summarize this position. It's pretty straightforward. Nagatomo played all the games in the Asian Cup except for Game 3, a B-team game where Sasaki replaced him. And Nagatomo all the way through World Cup qualifying. And Ito, I mentioned earlier, the central defender Hiroki Ito, played 3 of the friendlies with Nakayama in the other game. Nakayama... Sorry, I'll mention when we get to him. I didn't make a point of saying what position Nakayama is. But anyway, interestingly, in the last 4 games, then, players who were not left backs replaced Nagatomo rather than Sasaki. So perhaps Sasaki is not the backup to the position like I thought he was. Okay, that's left backs. Let's move on to right backs, see what's going on the right side. And there we have a definite candidate in Miki Yamane. And we have a possible candidate in Hiroki Sakai. And also possible is, say, Muroya. And we have 2 candidates who are possible but unlikely in Tomoki Iwata and Ken Matsubara. Okay, let's take a look at these players. Actually, Miki Yamane is new to the squad. Just since 2021. He got his first cap in March 2021 and started 9 of their remaining 20 games. Subbed in for 3 and was on the bench for 5. So just 3 games that he was not selected for. He was also one of the few senior players who played in the East Asian Football Championship there in the summer of 2022. So getting a lot of experience with Japan over a short period. He has 14 caps and 2 goals, actually, since 2021. He's not a youngster, though. He's actually 29 years old, so pretty late in joining the Japanese team. Although his first senior club was Shonan Bellmare in 2016, which would put him at 23 years old. But he did attend the Toin University of Yokohama, so perhaps got his degree before playing soccer professionally there. Anyway, late in joining the team, but now that he's there, he seems to have carved out a good position for himself. Hiroki Sakai started 6 of their 20 games since 2021, and he was on the bench for 1 and rested for 1, and out with 2 separate injuries for the last 6 games. He was actually injured in late March and not available for the games in late March and June, but he was playing for his club in early September, so seemed to have an injury that he recovered from. He's a veteran, actually. He's been with Japan since 2012 and has 71 caps and 1 goal. He's 32 years old. He's like the player we talked about earlier, was over in Europe but returned back to Japan. Now he's playing with Uara Red Diamonds, but he played for Marseille in France from 2016 to 21, and with Hanover in Germany before that. Moved over to Germany in 2012. 2013, the Confederation Cup was his first tournament. He was just a substitute in that tournament and on the bench for the 2014 World Cup, with no action. And in fact, for the 2015 Asian Cup, he was selected for the preliminary squad but didn't make the final cut. So he only became a starter in the 2018 World Cup, where he did start and finish all 4 of their games, and actually had some good chances in game 1 against Colombia there. For the 2019 Asian Cup, he started all games except a B-team game, and he got 2 yellow cards, but he didn't suffer a suspension. So a starter in the 2019 Asian Cup. He didn't go to the 2019 Copa America, but doesn't seem to be a starter now, having started just 6 of their games, but was struggling with injury. So it'll be interesting to see the September games, whether it's Sakai or Yamane who starts on the right side there. But it could also be the third possible candidate, or the next possible candidate, say Moroya. He started 2 of their 20 games since 2021. He was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 5, but injured for 2 and not selected for the last 6 matches. He's been with Japan since 2017, but only 16 caps in that time, and is 27 years old. He plays for Hanover in Germany since 2020. He moved from FC Tokyo in 2020, played for FC Tokyo for 4 years. That was his first senior club. So the World Cup seemed to come too early for him, despite his first cap in 2017, and he wasn't selected. But he was selected for the 2019 Asian Cup, but was a substitute. So he started only game 3, a B team game, and he didn't go to the Copa America in 2019. So an outside chance, maybe his club affiliation giving him a better chance than his recent participation. But say Moroya a bit back in the list there, but nevertheless a possible candidate. We have Tomoki Iwata as a possible but unlikely candidate. He returned after a 3-year absence, but only played in the East Asian Football Championship in 2022 recently. I didn't actually include most of those players because the only tournament they played in, for the most part, was the East Asian Championship. But I included Iwata because he was part of the 2019 Copa America squad as a substitute. Actually, he gained a starting position in that tournament and lined up as the right back for games 2 and 3. So he's 25 years old and has been with Japan since 2019. 4 caps, and plays for Yokohama F. Marinos in Japan. So an outside chance of making it in. And Ken Matsubara first appeared actually on the bench way back in 2014. Just a bench appearance, and then disappeared for 6 years. And then actually earned his first cap, his first field appearance, in March 2021, but wasn't called up since. So just light touches on the team twice in his career. So we won't give any more details on him because he seems very unlikely. Okay, let's summarize the right back position. It was Sakai in the Asian Cup, except for game 3 where Moroya replaced him. And Sakai also for the first 6 games of the 10 World Cup qualifying round 2 games. Moroya replaced once in those 6 games, but Yamani was selected for 4 of the last 5 games there. And then Yamani and actually left back Nagatomo moved across in friendlies, and Yamani and Nagatomo alternated 2 each. So that's the right back position. And we move on to midfielders. I'm beginning with defensive and central midfielders, and we find that they have a lot in the center and not so much on the outside. So buckle in for a lot of names here. We have 4 definite candidates in Wataru Endo, a definite candidate, and Hidemasa Morita, also definite, Io Tanaka, definite, and Shogo Taniguchi, also a definite candidate. And then 2 who seem to be off the squad, Kento Hashimoto and Sho Inagaki. Sho Inagaki also seems to be off the squad. So let's go back to the top with Endo Wataru. And he started 16 of their 20 games since 2021 and was not selected for 4 matches. Wataru Endo has been with Japan since 2015 and has 43 caps and 2 goals, 29 years old, and he plays for Stuttgart in Germany. And this name that seems to come up a lot, Sint-Truidens in Belgium. He was there from 2018 to 20. So a lot of players kind of not only there now, but going through there, having gone through there. He moved in 2018 there to Belgium. He was with Urawa Red Diamonds in Japan before that, and his first club, Shonan Bellmare, which was also his youth club. The World Cup 2018 was his first tournament, but he didn't see any action in that tournament, just a substitute on the bench. But in the Asian Cup 2019, he started 4 of their 7 games. And yeah, he was actually sick for game 1 and looked like he was injured for game 7 there. So we can basically consider him a starter in the Asian Cup and certainly in the qualification games leading up to this tournament. Wataru Endo, a definite candidate, and Hidemasa Morita started 10 of their 20 games since 2021. He was subbed in for 3, on the bench for 1, injured for 3 and not selected for only 2 matches there. So Hidemasa Morita got his first cap in 2018 and has 16 caps and 2 goals now and is 27 years old. He's playing for Sporting Lisbon in Portugal since 2022, and with Santa Clara in Portugal before that, having moved over from Kawasaki Frontale in Japan in 2021. So doing well for himself there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he moves up the pecking order here with that club affiliation that he has. He was selected for the 2019 Asian Cup. However, he was injured, declared injured the day before the tournament began and replaced by Tanashi Inui. So he actually generally played midfield as a left midfielder or as a left central midfielder in the 4-1-4-1 formation, so in front of the stopper on the left side there. Ayo Tanaka is our third definite candidate. He actually first appeared in the East Asian Football Championship in 2019 and was off the squad for 2 years, but returned in October 2021 and went on to start 7 of their remaining 12 games and subbed in for 4 more and on the bench for 1 other. So he kind of came in and was always called up from October 2021. So he has 14 caps and 2 goals since that East Asian Championship in 2019 and is just 24 years old and plays for Fortuna Dusseldorf in Germany since 2022. He moved there in, I guess, 2021 because he was loaned to Fortuna Dusseldorf from Kawasaki Frontale in Japan, which was his first club and his youth club. So no tournaments under his belt, but seems to have established himself in the second part of the period that we're talking about here. Okay, next, our final definite candidate, Shogo Taniguchi, started 6 of their 20 games since 2021, was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 5 and injured for 2, but not selected for 6, including the last 3 matches. He also played in the East Asian Football Championship in the summer of 2022, and Shogo Taniguchi has been with Japan actually since 2015, but just 13 caps in that time. He's 31 years old, and he spent his whole career at Kawasaki Frontale in Japan since 2014. So hasn't been involved in any tournaments despite being on the squad since 2015. Okay, Kento Hashimoto is the first of our players who seem to be off the squad. He started 2 of their 20 games since 2021, and he was subbed in for 2, but 3 separate injuries kept him out for 5 games, and he wasn't selected for 10 matches, so hasn't appeared for the team recently, but did play in the East Asian Football Championship in 2022. But otherwise, June 2021 was his last appearance for the senior squad. So he joined in 2019 and actually has 15 caps and 1 goal. So played a lot at first, but not so much recently. He's 28 years old. He did play for Rostov in Russia since 2020, but was probably told to leave the Russian team. So he was loaned to Huesca in Spain since 2022 here, and he played for FC Tokyo in Japan from 2012 to 20. So he doesn't have a tournament under his belt. Not selected for the 2019 Copa America or the Asian Cup there. Sho Inagi actually scored 2 of their goals in qualifying, but that was in the first round, so a pair against Mongolia, but last appeared for the national team in March 2021. So 31 years old with just 1 cap. Not likely to make the squad here. So let's summarize the position. No, actually, we're going to go on to central midfielders, despite having so many names there. We'll do central midfielders first, as we usually do. And here we have Gaku Shibasaki as a likely candidate, and Ko Itakuru also as a likely candidate, and Yuta Nakayama also as a likely candidate. So 3 likely candidates there. Ryo Hatate is a possible candidate, and finally Heo Kawabe as a possible but unlikely candidate. So let's go back to Gaku Shibasaki, and he's actually was captain for the 2019 Copa America there. So one of the senior players kind of sent to the Copa America, but I'll get to that later. In terms of the period we're talking about, he started 6 of their 20 games. He was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 4. So not selected for 7 others, but 6 of those were the first 6 matches in 2021. So he has been called up regularly in recent times. Gaku Shibasaki, actually, Koreans kind of are amused by his name because it kind of combines 2 words that are similar to swear words in Korea. I'm sure he hears that every time he meets a Korean person. Gaku Shibasaki has been on the squad since 2014 and has 59 caps and 3 goals. He's 30 years old, and he plays for Leganes in Spain since 2020. He was with Deportivo La Coruna in Spain prior to that, and Getafe and Tenerife on top of it. So he moved over in 2017, having played with Kashima Antlers as his first club in Japan from 2011 to 16. So excuse me a second. Just needed a sip of water there. The 2015 Asian Cup was his first cup. He subbed into games 3 and 4, and actually got a goal there against. I don't know who the goal was against, maybe against UAE there. He was a starter in the 2018 World Cup, started and finished all the games, and was also a starter in the 2019 Asian Cup. So as I said, he went to the Copa America that year too, in the summer of that year, and was actually captain of the team. One of only 2 players to appear in both tournaments there in 2019. So Gaku Shibasaki, a likely candidate. We also have Ko Itakura. So he started 6 of their 20 games since 2021. He was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 4. Injured for 2 and not selected for 6 games. So Ko Itakuru has been with Japan since 2019 and has 12 caps and 1 goal. He's 25 years old. He has a good club history. He's with Borussia Mönchengladbach now since 2022. He was with Manchester City in England from 2019 to 2022, but didn't play any games for them. Rather, he was loaned out to Schalke in Germany and Groningen in the Netherlands. So he moved from Kawasaki Frontale in 2018 to Manchester City. But, you know, even being on such a big club is kind of a feather in the cap. However, it hadn't helped him that much with Japan. He was selected for the 2019 Copa America squad, but wasn't a starter there, didn't appear in game 1, but did start games 2 and 3. So Ko Itakuru, still only a likely candidate for Japan despite that club affiliation there. So 25 years old. I'm not sure if I gave that information. 25 years old with 12 caps since 2019. Okay, and the last likely candidate is Yuta Nakayama, and he started 2 of their 20 games since 2021, but was subbed in for 9 and on the bench for 3. He actually spent 2 games with the under-21 team. That must have been in 2021 because he's 25 years old now, so I'm not sure how that works. Not selected for 4 matches. Yuta Nakayama has been with Japan since 2019 and has 17 caps and is 25 years old, as I said. Huddersfield in England is his club since 2022, and he was with Zwolle in the Netherlands before that and moved over from Kashiwa Reysol in Japan in 2019, I believe there. And he was selected for the, not the Asian Cup in 2019, but the Copa America. So he started and finished game 1, but didn't appear in games 2 and 3. So actually those 2 players, Ko Itakura and Yuta Nakayama, are 2 of the better players from that squad in the Copa America 2019. I mean, 2 of the players to kind of emerge from that squad and make a serious bid for the senior team. Nevertheless, they're likely candidates, but not definite. Rio Hatate is a possible candidate. He got his first appearance on the bench in March 2022 and started 1 of their remaining 6 games. Subbed in for 1, but then came or left as quickly as he came, not selected for the last 4 matches. However, his club affiliation is also good. He plays for Celtic in Scotland. That's a recent move in 2022. And the 25-year-old just has that 1 cap in 2022 for Japan. So maybe with that club affiliation, we'll see more of him in the future, as that will help him move up in the pecking order. Finally, we have Heyo Kawabe, and he last appeared for the national team in June 2021. So we have him as a possible but unlikely candidate. He also has a good club affiliation, though. He's with Wolverhampton Wanderers in England since 2022. Actually, no, he was loaned to Grasshopper in Switzerland from Wolverhampton, and he was with Grasshopper the year before that. Nevertheless, those are fairly decent European clubs, and he has 4 caps since 2021 and 1 goal, and is 27 years old. So another player who might come back into the spotlight a bit more. Okay, well, we have all of those names in central midfield, and obviously they can't all be on the field at the same time, so we'll see how they get distributed. And I'll actually kind of cover it a little bit here right now. So I'll do the defensive midfielders. I think I said Morita played as a left midfielder. Io Tanako is usually a right midfielder, but did play left midfield in 1 game. And Shogo Taniguchi played as a central defender towards the end of the period that we're talking about. So you can see they have all of these players in the same position, so kind of redistribute them to nearby positions nearby positions. Ko Itakuru, the central midfielder, also played as a central defender towards the end there, but we'll kind of describe what's going on in the central midfield. So in some of the formations, it's a pairing of players. So in the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-4-2, it'll be a pair of central midfielders, and that's what it was throughout the Asian Cup. And in a couple of the other formations, the 4-1-4-1 or the 4-3-3, it's just a single player in the middle, a stopper in the 4-1-4-1, and a central midfielder with the right and left midfielder in the 4-3-3. It's almost always Endo and Shibasaki when it's a pairing, and usually it's Endo if it's just one. But other players have come into the positions. Ironically, despite the number of players they have in this position, right back Tomiyasu has come into the position once, and so has Shiotani. They made appearances as central midfielders in the Cup, and right midfielder Haraguchi actually switched with Endo one time. Endo usually in the middle, though. Yeah, a little bit complicated, and I may have oversimplified it a little bit, but if I go into full details, I'm just throwing out names willy-nilly. Let's move on to left midfielders here. And as I say, they have a lot of players in the center and not so much on the outside. So left midfielder, a more defensive midfielder role, especially in the 4-3-3. So that's really the only time we see it is in the 4-3-3 formation, which they've only used a couple of times. Anyway, let's look at the candidates. We have Genki Haraguchi, one of Japan's veterans, as a likely candidate, and that's all we have actually for left midfield. So let's talk about him. He started 7 of their 20 games since 2021, and he was subbed in for 9 and on the bench for 2. So out with coronavirus for 1 and not selected for 1. Genki Haraguchi. He has been with Japan since 2011 and has 74 caps and 11 goals. And he's 31 years old. So he's been in Germany with several clubs, Union Berlin currently since 2021, Hanover, Hertha Berlin, and Fortuna Dusseldorf too. He moved over from Urawa Red Diamonds in Japan in 2014. And despite being on the team since 2011, he wasn't selected for the 2015 World Cup and only made the preliminary squad for the 2015 Asian Cup. So veteran though he is, the 2018 World Cup was his first tournament. However, he was a starter in that tournament and he scored one of their goals. Picked up a loose ball in the midfield and ran in and scored it against Belgium. So a good team to score against there. 2019 Asian Cup, he started all 7 games in that cup, and he scored 2 goals in that cup. One was on a penalty against Oman, and the other on a swift attack late in the game, injury time, in fact, against Iran. A big 3-0 win in the semi-final there. He didn't go to the 2019 Copa America, and he scored one of their goals in qualifying for this tournament. Genki Haraguchi, the only player coded as a left midfielder. So let me talk about the position. As I said, rarely used, only in the 4-3-3 formation. And usually in World Cup qualifying, it was actually Morita and Tanaka switched over once and Hatate once. So Kamada played the position twice in friendlies. Haraguchi himself actually lined up as a left attacking midfielder. We'll talk about that position under attacking midfielders, and as a left winger in the cup. In the friendlies, he was a right midfielder, And we saw that he one time switched with Endo to play as a central midfielder. That was against Brazil in a friendly. So Genki Haraguchi kind of moves around on the field. For right midfielders, again, well, we'll talk about that when we summarize the position. So let me give the candidate. We have Junya Ito as a definite candidate, and Daison Maeda as a possible candidate. That's all we have over here. Players coded in this position. So let's begin with Junya Ito. He started 14 of their 20 games since 2021, and he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 3. And the only game he missed was one he was suspended for. So Junya Ito has been with Japan since 2017 and has 38 caps and 9 goals. He's 29 years old and plays for Stade Reims in France since 2022, having played for Genk in Belgium for 2 years before that, and moved over in 2019 actually on loan to Genk from Kashawi Reysol. And he didn't make it to the 2018 World Cup. He wasn't selected for that one. And for the 2019 Asian Cup, he was just a substitute. Started only game 3 there, a B team game, but did sub into 4 games otherwise. But has really come on in World Cup qualifying here, scoring 6 of their 58 goals. But more significantly, starting 14 of their 20 games. So Junya Ito, now he actually really dominates the right attacking side of the field, and depending on the formation, will play as a right winger or a right attacking midfielder, or in the 4-3-3 a right forward. So whatever the formation is there, he's usually over on the right side at the attacking end. Daison Maeda had returned after a 2.5-year absence in January 2022. He didn't start any of their remaining games, but he subbed in for 5 and was on the bench for 1. So he has been with Japan since 2019 and has 8 caps and 1 goal. He's 25 years old. Another player who has recently moved to Celtic in Scotland since 2022. He was with Yoko F. Marinos before that, and also has played for Maritimo in Portugal in 2019 and 20. So he's kind of been around to several teams in Japan and a couple of teams in Europe as well. In terms of international tournaments, he wasn't part of the 2019 Asian Cup, but was part of that Copa America squad. So one of the 5 players basically to come out of that squad and make an impact on the senior team. He started game 1, but was subbed out 66 minutes in, and otherwise just appeared as a substitute really late in game 3. So kind of on the starting squad there, but basically lost his position. Daison Maeda, a right midfielder who we consider a possible candidate. So I'll summarize the position. Just like the left side, there's no right midfielders for some of the 4 nations. So in the Cup, no call for this position. Basically in the first half of the period we're talking about, so the World Cup qualification games, rarely used. But a 4-3-3 was used in the friendly. So basically it was Ayo Tanaka in the second half of the friendlies, and then Haraguchi in the friendlies. So right midfielder we consider more like a defensive right midfielder, like in the middle line of a 4-3-3. So Junya Ito, despite being coded as a right midfielder, plays further up the field in an attacking role. And we are moving further up the field ourselves by talking about the left winger position. And again, it's only used in some of the formations, but we'll get to that later. The candidates here are Takumi Minamino as a definite candidate. And actually, he's listed as a forward. His designation is as a forward or attacking midfielder, but I'm moving him here because he did play as a co-forward in the Cup and once as a central attacking midfielder. But for the period we're analysing here, the World Cup qualifiers and the friendlies, he's always been on the left side. So he's played as a left midfielder once, so a bit more defensive role, but 3 times as a left winger and as a left attacking midfielder or a left forward in the middle of the period that we're talking about. He started 14 of their 20 games, Takumi Minamino. 14 of their 20 games, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2, and injured for 1 and not selected for 1. So he kind of does play in various positions, but Takumi Minamino has 43 caps for Japan since 2015 and a fairly good scoring ratio of 17 goals in those 43 caps, and is 27 years old. He currently plays for Monaco in the French league. He moved from Liverpool in England, where he was from 2020 to 22, though he was loaned from Liverpool to Southampton in 2021. And he was with Red Bull Salzburg in Austria before that, moving over from Cerezo Osaka in 2015. That was his youth club and his first club too. So despite being on the team since 2015, he only made the preliminary squad for the 2015 Asian Cups and not the final cup. And he wasn't selected for the World Cup in 2018 either. So the 2019 Asian Cup was his first tournament, but he was a starter in that tournament. And he didn't play in the Copa America later that year. Has come on even more in World Cup qualifying, scoring 10 of their 58 goals in qualifying. And as I said, started 14 of their 20 games. So we consider him a definite candidate. And, it looks like I didn't introduce the other left winger. That is likely candidate Kaoru Mitoma. Kaoru Mitoma. He has got his first appearance on the bench in November 2021 and went on to start 3 of their remaining 10 games, subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 1. So the only 2 games he missed were ones he was injured for. And he has been with Japan then since 2021. He has 9 caps and 5 goals in his time. So that's a good scoring ratio, but we'll have to see whether he can keep up that kind of ratio. He's 25 years old. He plays for Brighton in England since 2021, but he was actually loaned out to Union Saint-Gilloise in Belgium for 2021-22. And I believe that team is doing quite well in Belgium. And he moved over from Kawasaki Frontale in 2021. So no tournaments under his belt for Kaoru Mitoma, but seems to be making his way onto the squad. He scored 2 of their goals, actually, and a crucial late winning goal against Australia in the second last game of qualifying there. And so we have 2 players coded as left wingers. So now let me talk about the position. Left winger is only used when they play in a 4-4-2 setup or in a 4-1-4-1, which they did for 3 games of World Cup qualifying. So in the Cup, it was Haraguchi playing in the role, and Minamino, who we've moved from the forward position to left wing here, played all 3 games as left winger in World Cup qualifying. And we're going to see that Minamino also plays as left attacking midfielder and left forward. And also we're going to see Mitoma has basically been used as a left forward in that 4-3-3 setup. But let's move on to right midfielders. And here we have Takefusa Kubo as a likely candidate. And we have Ryo Miyaichi as a possible but unlikely candidate, and Keita Endo as a player seemingly off the squad. So let's take a look at Takafusa Kubo. And he started only 3 of their 20 games since 2021, but he was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 4, and was with the under-23 team for a couple of games, as well as being injured for 4 and not selected for 3. So nevertheless, we have him as a likely candidate. He's been with Japan since 2019 and has 19 caps and 1 goal, and is 21 years old. So he plays for Real Sociedad in Spain since 2020, and he was with Real Madrid in Spain from 2019 to 22. However, he didn't play any games in his 3 years with Real Madrid, but rather was loaned out to Mallorca and Getafe and Villarreal in Spain. And he moved over from FC Tokyo in 2019. So very good club affiliations there. In terms of tournaments, he was part of the Copa America 2019 squad, so not the Asian Cup that year, but he is one of the top players to come out of that Copa America squad, apart from the veterans who were sent. And there he started and finished games 1 and 3 and subbed into game 2. He was supposed to start game 2, but for some reason he didn't. And he didn't score any goals in that tournament. But, looking like a good candidate here, and perhaps will get more starts given his good club affiliation there. He played as a right midfielder once, a more defensive position, and also played as a right attacking midfielder, a more attacking position. So we'll see where he ends up, but we have him likely to make the squad. Ryo Miyaichi returned after an almost 10-year absence to play in the East Asian Football Championship in the summer of 2022. So I'm not sure why I have him on the squad here. I think I was impressed that he returned to the team after a 10-year absence. Actually, Miyaichi looked like a promising candidate for a while. He's been on the team since 2012, but just has 5 caps, and it's 30 years old. But as I said, he looked like a promising candidate early on because he played for Arsenal in England from 2011 to 15. Man, he was mostly loaned out there, but to good clubs like 20 in Netherlands and Wigan and Bolton in England and Feyenoord in the Netherlands. But now he's with Yokohama's F. Marinos in Japan, so didn't really live up to his potential there. And finally, we have a player who seems to be off the squad, Keita Endo, and he earned his first cap with the start way back in December 2019, but then was off the team and returned after a 1.5 year absence, just to be subbed in for 1 game, but then fell off the team and wasn't selected. So Keita Endo, very unlikely or to make the squad, seems to be off it. All right, well, let us talk about the right wing position. It's very similar to what we said for the left wing. So again, only used in a 4-4-2 or a 4-1-4-1 formation, which was used in 3 games of World Cup qualifying. Attacking midfielder Doan, who we'll meet soon, played the position in the Cup. And right midfielder Junya Ito played all 3 games in World Cup qualification. So Japan, a bit of a confusing team, because it's kind of humorous that I'm introducing players here only to find that they haven't played in the position that they're coded for. But there we have it. And okay, let us move on. I've just realized actually Ryo Miyaichi and Keita Endo are actually left wingers. rather than right wingers, so I should have done them in that section, but it doesn't matter because neither of them are likely to make the squad. Okay, well, we're going to move on to forwards, and we'll talk about attacking midfielders pretty soon here, but I just want to make some notes on the position. So if you think of the forward line in the 4-2-3-1 formation, which they used quite a bit in the group stage of the Cup and in early World Cup qualifying. There we have two attacking midfielders and a central midfielder. And so, yeah, sometimes we have a left attacking midfielder and a right attacking midfielder. But in the 4-3-3, we have a left forward and a right forward. And we can simplify things a little bit because it tends to be the same players who play, whether it's a left attacking midfielder or left forward, and the same on the right side. So let's just make a couple of notes here. For the left side, left attacking midfielder or left forward, and to be honest, usually left winger also, it was Haraguchi playing that role in the Cup. And then Minamino took over shortly into World Cup qualifying. The forward Furuhashi played once during that transition from Haraguchi to Minamino and played once in that position otherwise. And Mitoma played the last game of World Cup qualifying and then twice in friendlies. But at the end, Minamino returned for the last friendly. So you can generally think of that left attacking midfielder and left forward as Minamino's position in recent times. On the right side, it was Doan in the Cup. And as we said earlier, right midfielder Junya Ito kind of came into possession of the spot during the World Cup qualifying. Asano and Kubo each replacing him one time. And then in the friendlies in June, Doan returned and kind of alternated with Junya Ito in the friendlies. So from what it looks like, it's kind of Doan and Ito occupying the spot with perhaps Ito as the first choice, but we'll see. Again, the friendlies, the games in September will shed some light on who really has the spot. So we've already introduced Junya Ito on the right midfielder. So for attacking midfielders, we're going to meet Ritsu Doan, who is a likely candidate. And we're going to take a look at Yasuto Wakizaka as a player who seems to be off the team. So, as we said, Ritsu Doan played kind of as a right attacking midfielder in the Cup, or as a right winger when the formation allowed for that. But since the Cup, he's only started 2 of their 20 games since 2021, and he was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 4. Injured for 2 and not selected for 10 others, so has kind of lost his starting position that he had in the Asian Cup. He's been with Japan since 2018 and has 28 caps and 3 goals and is 24 years old. And he plays for Freiburg in Germany since 2020, but was with PSV Eindhoven before that. From 2019 to 2022. He moved from Gamba Osaka in Japan in 2018 to the Netherlands, playing actually for Groningen first, and actually 2017 because he was loaned for the first year. His only tournament was the 2019 Asian Cup, where he was a starter, and he scored 2 of their goals there. And didn't go to the Copa America in 2019. And as I said, kind of has lost his starting position to Ito with just 2 of their 20 games. But they are recent games in the friendlies, so perhaps he's making his way back into the squad there. He has been on the squad as a substitute and on the bench, but making his way back into a starting position. Okay, Yasuto Wakizaka is seemingly off the squad. He got his first cap in March 2021, but didn't start any of their 20 games. Any of their 20 games since then, but he was subbed in for one and on the bench for one. But then he drifted off the team. He did come back for the East Asian Football Championship in the summer of 2022, which was actually after the friendlies. But that doesn't mean much because those players, there doesn't seem to be a lot of correlation between those players and the players selected for the senior team. So that is the attacking midfielder position, and we did talk about it again. Central attacking midfielder kind of rarely used. Maybe we didn't talk about it. It's just in the 4-2-3-1 formation that it is used, and that was just used in the group stage of the Asian Cup and in the early games of World Cup qualifying. So it was Minamino and Kitagawa in the Cup, and Kamada twice in World Cup qualifying, and Kubo once. So once again, we have players that were not coded for the position playing it. Doan, who is an attacking midfielder, played on the right side there. Okay, we move on to forwards because Japan doesn't have any secondary strikers. And so we're on to our last category of center forwards, basically. And we should be talking about Takumi Minamino here because that's his primary designation. But because he's been on the left side, we talked about him there instead. So our first candidate here is the likely candidate of Kyogo Furuhashi. And we also have Daichi Kamada as likely candidates, both of those likely candidates. We have Takuma Asano as a possible candidate, and Yuya Osaka, the veteran, also as a possible candidate now, and Ayase Ueda, possible at the possible level. And then at the possible but unlikely level, Daichi Hayashi, and finally Ado Onaiwu as seemingly off the squad. So 6 forwards, 7 forwards to deal with there. But a couple of them are fairly new to the squad, including the first one, Kyogo Furuhashi. So he started 4 of their 20 games since 2021 and was subbed in for 10 and on the bench for 1. So he was injured for 4 and just 1 game that he wasn't selected for. New to the squad, as I said, despite being 27-year-old, he has been with Japan since 2019 and has 16 caps and 3 goals with them. I believe he's the 3rd player we're talking about that is with Celtic in Scotland now. He's been with them since 2021, having moved from Vissel Kobe in Japan. And he doesn't have any tournaments under his belt, but he did score 3 of their 58 goals in qualifying, although 2 of them were against Mongolia. I know one of the games was a 14-0 win. I think the second game was a bit mild, but they really filled their boots, and we'll talk about that actually when we look at their goal scoring in general. The second likely candidate is Daichi Kamada, and he started 8 of their 20 games since 2021. He was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 5, so injured for 2 and not selected for 2. And Daichi Kamada has been with Japan since 2019, but has 21 caps in that time and is 26 years old. So a bit of a late joiner, but has played a lot since joining. He's with Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany, which I think is also doing quite well. He's been with them since 2017 and is one of the many Japanese players who has been with Sint-Truidense in Belgium. He was loaned to them in 2018 and 19, and he was in Japan prior to that, moving over to Europe in 2017. So he doesn't have any tournaments under his name either. He was not selected actually for the Copa America 2019 squad there. Yeah, okay. And thirdly, we have Takuma Asano. He's just a possible candidate, the first of our three possible candidates here. So, oh, hang on. I'm just going to go back and talk a little bit about where Kyogo Furuhashi and Daiichi Kamada have played. So, Kyogo Furuhashi has mostly played as a left attacking midfielder and as a left forward, so not really a centre forward here. And Daiichi Kamada has played as a left midfielder twice in friendly, so a bit more of a defensive role, surprisingly, and then as a central attacking midfielder twice in World Cup qualifying. So we haven't really met our centre forward yet. But let's forge on with Takuma Asano, and he started 6 of their 20 games since 2021, and he was subbed in for 8 and on the bench for 1. So injured for 2 and not selected for 3. He's been with Japan since 2015 and has 36 caps and 7 goals and is 28 years old. And he is one of many players who play in Germany. So he's with Bochum in Germany since 2021 and actually was with Partizan in Serbia before that and Arsenal in England, although he played no games for Arsenal in his 3 years with them. Rather, he was loaned to Hanover in Germany and Stuttgart before that. So he moved from Sanfrecce Hiroshima in Japan in 2016 over to Europe there. But despite that, he's been on the team since 2015, but has never actually been selected for a tournament. So he was on the preliminary squad for the 2018 World Cup, but didn't make the final cut. And for the 2019 Asian Cup, he was selected for the final squad, but injured and not selected either for the 2019 Copa America. So despite his long history with Japan, has never been in a tournament and is only a possible candidate for this one. I mean, in addition to not playing a lot of games, we might have him as a likely candidate because he has been called up for most of the games, but he is an injury risk on top of it, so may not play in this game. We'll talk about that more at the end. He has played as a forward. He plays as a forward 3 times towards the end of the period we're talking about, and played also as a right attacking midfielder. So Takuma Asano, well, we have him as a possible candidate, but injury might get in the way. Yuya Osako is something of a veteran on the team. We'll talk about that. He started 11 of their 20 games since 2021. He was injured for 2, but then not selected for the last 6 matches. So he has recently moved back to Japan, to Vissel Kobe, since 2021, but he also played in Germany for Werder Bremen in 2018 to 21 and for FC Cologne and 1860 Munich since 2004. He was with Kashima Antlers for 5 years before that and moved over in 2014. He's been with Japan since 2013 and was part of the 2014 World Cup squad, but he didn't make the final cut for the Asian Cup 2015 squad, but was a starter in the following World Cup also. So 2 World Cups in a row, but didn't make the Asian squad in between. He was a starter in 2018 and actually had a very good tournament there. He was declared man of the match in game 1 against Colombia and scored 4 of their 12 goals. Was that in qualifying? No, sorry, I'm looking at the Asian Cup where he scored 4 of their goals. So played quite well there too. He was a starter in that cup too. So for World Cup 2022, qualifying, he scored 10 of the 58 goals, so he was a co-top scorer there. One of the Japanese players who really has a good scoring record. The question being whether he can do it against strong teams, because most of his goals have come against weaker teams. But anyway, that worrying detail of missing the last 6 matches made us put him down to a possible candidate. He's a bit intermittent. He was kind of on and off in the Asian Cup because he started actually only 3 games. I said he was a starter because he started game 1, but in fact he just started 3 of the 7 games. So it was intermittent there, and also in World Cup qualifying games. And then he disappeared in the ninth game of World Cup qualifying, 9 of 10, and didn't appear in any of the recent friendlies. So Yuya Osaka, a bit of a question mark there. He does seem to be their best scorer, so I'd be surprised if they just left him off the field, because they don't really seem to have anyone to replace him, and have a bit of a problem scoring goals, as we'll see soon. Anyway, let's move on to Ayase Ueda. So he returned after a more than 2-year absence in March 2022 to start 2 of their remaining 6 games to June of 2022. He was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2. So just 1 match that he wasn't selected for after coming back in March. And he's been with Japan since 2019, although there was that 2-year absence. So he only has 10 caps. He's 24 years old, though, so quite young. Ayase Ueda. He plays for Cercle Brugge in Belgium since 2022, so a recent move there from Kashima Antlers in Japan, where he started his senior club career. So we have him as a possible candidate, and now we take a look at Daichi Hayashi. His first and only appearance was on the bench in March 2022, so not much to say about him. Doesn't have any caps for Japan. Maybe the most interesting fact is he's part of that gang that is forming at St. Truidense. Again, 6 of their players on the roster right now, and several others having come through at St. Truidense there. So not sure exactly why that is, but it's kind of cute. Ado Onaiwu is the last candidate we'll look at. He seems to be off the squad. He first appeared on the bench in November 2019, but then disappeared, but returned after a 19-month absence in June 2021 and started 1 of their remaining 17 games. And he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 3, but not selected for the last 10 matches. The interesting thing about Ado Onaiwu is he just has 3 caps, and in one of their games he scored 3 goals, so a hat-trick in 7 minutes, in fact, and that was in their 5-1 win over Kyrgyzstan. So got to give him credit for making the best of his appearances. We might see more of him in the future, actually. He plays for Toulouse in France, which is a fairly good club affiliation. And again, 3 caps in 3 goals certainly looks good on paper. So Ado Onaiwu, a forward, but we have him off the squad because he didn't appear for the last 10 games. So that brings us to the end of forwards, but I'll just summarize the position. In the Asian Cup, it was kind of undecided. Kitigawa started it, and then Muto took over the starting spot, and then Osako in the cup. Kitigawa and Muto are both gone now, but Osako remained and played in the first most of the games in World Cup qualification, but towards the end was replaced by Asano and Ueda. And then, as we saw, Osaka was gone for the last 6 games. So Asano and Asano played 2 of the friendlies, Ueda and Tanaka each playing 1. So not sure what's going on with Osaka there. And so we'll talk about that moving on. So that brings us to the end of the player-by-player discussion, and we're going to talk about the team as a whole here. So we'll go back to some of the notes that we had at the top of the podcast. Some listeners may be coming in just for the end of this podcast, or YouTube viewers, so we'll just remind them of a couple of the notes from above. Japan is prone to lapses in games. I'm not going to expand on that here because the next point actually elucidates it. So first game jitters. It seems like they get a bit nervous in their first games. In 2018 World Cup qualifying, they started with a home tie against Singapore, bit of a disappointment, and in the second round a home loss to UAE. In this qualifying for the 2022 World Cup, they started the second round with a home loss to Oman. And in the Asian Cup 2019, it was a struggling 3-2 win over Turkmenistan. So all games they should be winning, but a bit of a struggle for them. Actually, they were blessed in the 2018 World Cup where Colombia took a red card and gave away a penalty to them earlier in the game. So that really gave them a good start. But they did only win the game 2-1 despite being up a man for most of the game. Incidentally, they meet Germany first here, so that whole discussion may be meaningless. Okay, so we've also noticed a bit of a pattern of some odd strategies in tournaments. So we were really baffled for the third game in the 2018 World Cup, where they fielded a weakened team despite needing points to go through. They eventually made it, and if you go back to the team podcast, you can get the full story, but we won't repeat it all here. A bit strange, too, in the 2019 Asian Cup that they were so defensive in the round of 16 game, and particularly in the quarterfinal game against Vietnam. There doesn't seem much need for Japan to be defensive against Vietnam, even though they did have a good young team. And in both of those games, they played an almost Catenaccio style and came out 1-0 winners. But I did find it a bit odd that they were being so defensive. And finally, in the last game of World Cup qualifying here for 2022 World Cup qualifying, they fielded a new formation with several new players or several kind of experimental players, I would say, in their last home game against Vietnam, and ended up tying that game, which cost them first place in the group. So some odd strategic decisions there. At the beginning of the podcast, we talked about the 2019 Copa America perhaps being less fruitful than expected. I won't repeat all of that here, but one general concern that came out of the players, didn't really come out of the players, I'm maybe introducing it here, is Japan's concern with scoring goals. So we did see in the players that they really don't have enough forwards, and the one player who does seem to score a lot for them has been absent for the last 6 games. But even that player, I just want to even Yuya Osaka is the player I'm talking about. Even that player, is not kind of a renowned goal scorer, and they lack a definite scorer, which is often actually a trouble for East Asian teams in general. It doesn't really show in Japan's scoring record, and that's because they've played some fairly weak teams. For example, they got 46 goals over 8 games in their round 1 qualifying for the 2022 World Cup. So it kind of masked, that included, by the way, a 14-0 win over Mongolia and a 10-0 win over Myanmar. But it kind of masks the fact that they do have trouble scoring goals. That was evident more in the second round, where they scored 12 goals over 10 games in the second round, so that's just over a goal a game. In the 2018 World Cup, though, it wasn't bad. They got 6 goals over 4 games against pretty tough teams. And in the 2019 World Cup, they scored. They won. Oh, sorry, Asian Cup. They won 3-0 over Iran, which has a pretty tough defense. So they can score goals. Otherwise, though, in the final stage of that cup, it was just 1 goal per game. So a bit of an issue with them scoring goals, and perhaps with having a player. We saw actually they don't have a definite forward there. So. Have a bit of trouble finding scorers. Let's take a look at their club affiliations. So we saw in the player-by-player thing that a lot of them play in Europe, or if they don't play in Europe, a lot of the ones who play for Japanese teams have played in Europe, and for some pretty good clubs. So we have Tomiyasu with Arsenal. We have a couple of players with Stuttgart in Germany, and Schalke. Eintracht Frankfurt, who are doing well, and kind of maybe secondary teams in England like Brighton, and in France, Reims. We have Monaco and Real Sociedad. So, a lot of good clubs in England represented. I would say about a quarter of the players play for the top teams in Japan: Shimizu S-Pulse, Kawasaki Frontale, and FC Tokyo. And interestingly, a couple of other interesting ones. We have 3 players playing for Celtic in Scotland. And then we have, on this squad, just a couple of players playing for Sint-Truiden in Belgium, but actually there are 6 Japanese players on that squad, and several others have gone through that squad besides. So that's kind of interesting details. I forgot to mention Sporting Lisbon as another top club that Japan plays for. So pretty good club affiliation coming into the cup, and certainly a lot better than it used to be, because I remember about 15 years ago, they really only had a couple of players playing for teams abroad, these Southeast Asian teams. Now Korea and Japan and the top clubs over there have players with several players with top European clubs, so they've done well improving. Okay, let's move on to this chart, and it's a little statistic I'm putting together. How many players do they have kind of on their slate before them? For Japan, it's quite high, actually, 50 players, and the average is 49. So not an inordinate number of players that they have before them, and I didn't feel it was a problem in the going through the squad. It's more notable if it's say higher than 55 or lower than 40. I would say lower than 45 perhaps. Anyway, total number of players under consideration then. These are players in our definite, likely, or possible category. 33, so that's bang on average, so I won't go into detail about that. Again, only significant if it's out of the range. Number of candidates who are kind of decided upon, so in the definite or likely category, and this actually is a bit high for Japan, 24. So that means basically 24 of their players are decided upon, and there's only room for 2 more. Well, there's always a couple of injuries and a couple of players in form that come in late and stuff like that. Right now, it looks like they only have a couple of positions to fill, and that's in line with Japan because they tend to be a very kind of steady, stable team. So they don't like a lot of experimentation there. So I think they're looking good, but there will be a couple of players, perhaps I think they have a bit of a need for outside midfielders and a bit of a need for forwards. So I'm expecting to see a few of those players perhaps brought in for the September games, trying to find good candidates there. Average age of Japan is 28. That is actually the second oldest among all the teams I've done. The average is 26.7. And anything above 27 is kind of old. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a negative thing. It might mean they're a bit slower than some of the younger teams. But only Belgium is older on average than them. Belgium has 45 caps, so with the age comes experience at least. But while Belgium has 45 caps, Japan only has 34 caps. So 34 caps is a bit above average, but you know, the price they're paying in older players is not perhaps giving them the experience bonus that it's giving to Belgium. Let's move on to goals. They have 121 goals among their players. The average is 126, but I've identified goals as a bit of a problem for Japan. And I think this number of goals is inflated by playing weak teams in the first round of qualifying and even in the first round of the Asian Cup. You know, teams like Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan, they're not bad teams, but, you know, teams like Mongolia and Myanmar, they do run the score up on them. So it kind of inflates their goal record. Even at 121, it's fairly low. It's below average. And that averages out to 3.8 per player, which is also fairly low. But we won't dwell on it. They do have a bit of a problem scoring. And I'll give you actually a bit of detail on a couple of these categories. So for goals, actually, Osaka is pretty good with 43%, 44% scoring ratio, 25 goals in 57 games. And Minamino is 39.5%. So these numbers look pretty good. I'm only going to talk about players who have more than 15 caps or so. Those are the two biggest scorers there. They have a handful of players who are above 10%. But Daichi Kamada is about 30%, so he would be their third highest scorer. Junya Ito, not bad at 23%. Everyone else is below 20%, and actually not many players higher than 15%. So, yeah, a bit of trouble scoring, but again, it doesn't really show in the numbers here because of some of the easy, weaker teams that they do fill their boots against. And I'll go back actually to talk about age, just to point out that their oldest player is Eiji Kawashima. He's 39 years old, so be one of the oldest players to play in the World Cup when he gets there. And they have 11 of their 32 definite, likely, impossible players. 11 of those 32 players are above 30, but they do have some younger players with 7 players of 24 years old or younger, so do have a bit of youth on the squad. But yeah, quite a few players who are older than 30 and 5 players who are 33 years old or more. Okay, let's talk about players and issues to watch. So one of the things that might be a concern is that they have no fourth goalie in the wings. So we saw that they have 1 definite and 2 likely. One of the likely is 39-year-old Kawashima. I just worry that if one of those goalies gets injured, I mean, of course, they have goalies available playing in Japan, but none of them have really played for the national team. We saw that they have about 6 goalies who seem to be off the team. So maybe a bit of a problem if one of the players gets injured, but not too bad an issue, and actually no real issues in defence for Japan. So we'll move on to the midfield, and we saw in the player-by-player run-through that they have too many kind of central midfielders. I should change that to central midfielders, but yes, defensive midfielders. Okay, I'll just change that back. And not enough attacking midfielders. I might say too that they have too many central midfielders and not enough outside midfielders. But they seem to manage, and I don't think it's a big problem. Just in terms of position, variety of position, they have 4 definite candidates as defensive midfielders and 3 likely candidates as central midfielders. So obviously some of those players have to play out of position and have been playing out of position. Actually, we saw in the player-by-player part of the podcast that it seems like all of their players are playing out of position, or a lot of players are. It seems like players coded in certain position play anywhere but in that position. But okay, and then in terms of outside midfielders, they just have 4 midfielders who are either right wing, left wing, or attacking midfielders. So a bit of a concern there, but they seem to have managed fine. And on the attack, probably one of the more serious issues, not enough forwards and no big scorer. Although they have players with good percentages, they don't have one forward that they start all the time and rely on. In fact, we didn't have any forwards that were definite candidates there. So again, I think in September they'll be looking for that. Okay, let's take a look at some of the new players on the team. So Hidemasa Morito, actually not that young. He's 27 years old and has been with the team since 2018. He plays for Sporting Lisbon, and he's a definite candidate. So kind of an exciting player there. Ayo Tanaka, and I'm organizing these actually according to definite, likely, and possible. So the first 3 are definite new players who have made it onto the squad, and we have them as definite making the World Cup. So Ayo Tanaka, been with the team since 2019 and is 24 years old, plays for Fortuna Dusseldorf in Germany. We have him as a definite candidate. And Shogo Taniguchi, not young actually, 31 years old, but he got his first cap in 2015, but we have him here because he's never made it to a tournament. But now in recent times, he seems like he's going to be a definite candidate. He plays for Kawasaki Frontale in Japan. Then we have 4 candidates who are at the likely level. Hiroki Ito. So Hiroki Ito is 23 years old and has 5 caps since 2022, so just joined the team. He plays for Stuttgart in Germany. We have Kaoru Mitoma as a likely candidate. He is 25 years old, but just joined Japan in 2021. He has 9 caps and 5 goals, so kind of exciting there. And he has moved to Brighton in England since 2021, but is actually, no, I think he's back at Brighton now because his loan spell with Union Saint-Gilloise in Belgium ended. So a potentially interesting candidate there. And also likely Kyogo Furuhashi. So he has been with the team since 2019, 16 caps and 3 goals, not a great return for a forward, and is 27 years old, but one of the 3 players playing with Celtic there. Daichi Kamada, also a forward and likely to make the cup, and 21 caps since 2019, but no goals. So I don't think he's been playing as a forward, but still, that is not great. He plays for Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany, though, and they seem to be doing quite well recently. And we have just 2 possible candidates Here, Rio Hatate, one of those three playing for Celtic in Scotland. He's 25 years old, just joined the team in 2022. And Takuma Asano plays for Bochum in Belgium, but has been with Arsenal in England and Stuttgart in Germany as well. And he's 27 years old and actually has been on the team since 2015, but has not played in a tournament yet. And actually may not play in this one because he's an injury out, which is what we're going to move on to next. So not too many injuries for Japan. We have Ko Itakuru, a central midfielder who we consider a likely candidate, but he is injured with a ruptured knee ligament. And that injury happened in mid-September, and he has an unknown return date. But I don't know whether I read this or just because of the nature of the problem. But I have a note here that he's unlikely to make the cup. So that's too bad for Ko Itakuru and for Japan. We just met Takuma Asano as a new player, but he has actually the same problem exactly like a ruptured knee ligament from mid-September with an unknown return date. So it also says in my notes that he's unlikely to make the cup also, which is really unfortunate for him because he was selected for the 2019 Asian Cup but left out due to injury. So it would be sad if that happened twice in a row to him. Finally, we'll move on to notable absences before we do the predicted starters. And this player wasn't as much a veteran as I thought he was, but Gen Shoji, a central defender who was a starter in the 2018 World Cup. He didn't play in the 2019 Asian Cup. But for the notable absences, I think of many listeners who go from kind of World Cup to World Cup and don't necessarily follow the regional cups in between. So I go back to the 2018 World Cup squad here. Anyway, Gen Shoji, he actually did start a couple of games in 2021, but has not appeared for the last 12 matches. So an outside possibility of coming back, but certainly not likely. Makoto Hasebi, 114 caps from 2006 to 2018. A real veteran for the team. He's actually still active with Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany, but he did announce his retirement at the end of the 2018 World Cup, so we won't see him. One of their big names, Keisuke Honda, 98 caps and 37 goals in his period from 2008 to 2018. Actually, he was just a substitute in the World Cup there, so was starting to age out even at that point. He's now 36 years old. So, 32 years old there, but anyway, he wasn't a starter, but a big name, and he played in Lithuania in 2021 and in Azerbaijan too. He's currently on a TAS, so maybe those will be the last teams that he plays for. Shinji Kagawa last played in the 2018 World Cup, and he played from 2008 to 2019, actually. So he did play a couple of games in 2019, but 96 caps and 31 goals. He's actually with St. Trudens in Belgium, that team where Japan seems to be forming a little society. And he's played all over the place, including Borussia Dortmund and Manchester City, his biggest clubs there, and last played in the 2018 World Cup as far as tournaments go anyway. Shinji Okazaki, also off the club. He played from 2008 to 19 and has 119 caps and 50 goals on record. He's 36 years old. Still playing and humorously with St. Trudens in Belgium. kind of an ongoing joke through this because so many Japanese players have been there, and a real veteran there. And finally, Takashi Inui. Less of a name than some of the ones we have above, but he played from 2009 to 19 and has 36 caps and 6 goals. But he was a starter also in the World Cup, like Gen Shoji. That's the reason why he's here. All right, well, our last order of business is moving on to predicted starters. So here we go. There's the list of candidates, and we'll begin with of course, the manager, Hajime Moriyasu. Well, we doubt Japan's going to change that right before the cup here, so we'll consider him a starter or a definite going to be there. For a goalkeeper, almost certainly Shuichi Gonda, and the likely candidates are Daniel Schmidt and Aiji Kawashima. We think those three will definitely make the cup, with Shuichi Gonda as the definite candidate. For central defenders, we have Mai Yoshida as definite, and Takahiro Tomiyasu and Hiroki Ito as likely. So in terms of starters, almost certainly Mai Yoshida and Takahiro Tomiyasu. Hiroki Ito actually played as a left back, and in the last 3 games, so maybe a starter if some changes underfoot there, but not as a starter for the central defenders. But they'll probably bring 5 or 6, so I'm sure he'll be going to the cup. As a left back, I'm going to say Yuto Nagamoto as the starter, although he didn't start the last few games as left back. I think he actually may have moved over to the right rather than have not been there. And we have Sho Sasaki as a possible candidate, but I wonder if that central defender Hiroki Ito is actually moving into the backup position as a left back. Nevertheless, we're just doing starters here. On the right back, Miki Yamane has put in a good bid recently, but I still think Hiroki Sake, who really, in my mind, is the starter, has a strong bid too. So I'm going to hedge my bets here and just say that I put them in yellow, which kind of means both of them will start. In fact, I'm kind of cheating and being a bit indecisive there. It's just that Hiroki Sake didn't play the last several games, so we're a bit of a question mark about where he's at, but I might see him as a starter above Yamane. Anyway, for defensive midfielders, we have 4 definite candidates: Wataru Endo, Hidemasa Morito, Ayo Tanaka, and Shogo Taniguchi. And 4 definite to make the cup. But as far as central midfielders go, I'm only going to say Wataru Endo as a definite starter among those. And we also have 3 likely central midfielder: Gaku Shibasaki, Ko Itakuru, and Yuta Nakayama. And among those, I would only say Shibasaki as a definite starter there. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if some of those others did start, but I'm not confident enough to say that they'll be starters. Genki Haraguchi is a big enough name that I think he should be a starter, but really he's only started 7 of their 20 games, so I can't really put him down as a starter. It's a bit hard to imagine because he started in the World Cup and Asian Cup the last 2 tournaments, but no, I'm not going to do it. On the other hand, right midfielder Junya Ito, I do think will be a starter. He's pretty much owned the right attacking side. And actually on the left attacking side is, I'm going to predict Takumi Minamino. He's actually a forward, but in the player-by-player, I moved him to the left side because ever since after the Asian Cup, he has been playing kind of as a right attacking or left attacking midfielder or left forward. As far as forwards go, though, and those are really the only names I'm seeing, but maybe I should go through a couple of the names. So right midfielder, definite is Junior Ito. That's the only definite or likely. For left wingers, I put Takuma Minamino here, and Kaoru Mitoma is also a likely candidate to make the squad. I don't see him as a starter, though. And for right wingers, Takefusa Kubo, I see him more as a substitute. I wouldn't nominate him as a starter. For forwards, we have attacking midfielder Ritsu Doan as likely to make the squad, and he was a starter for a while in the Asian Cup, but his position has kind of been taken over by Ito there, so I can't put him down as a starter. And for forwards, we have Kyogo Furuhashi and Daichi Kamada. I don't think either of those are really starters. To me, it's Yuya Osako, but he's been absent for the last 6 games, I think. And so I can't say with any confidence that he'll be a starter, but maybe I'll put him in yellow. And some of the others, maybe we'll start a game here or there, but I really think they're kind of looking for a centre forward, and we'll try out a couple in the September games because I don't think they've really settled on one. So that's it for what it's worth. I'm not sure I've made 11 players there, but those are the players who I do see starting on the pitch, and that brings us to the end of the podcast. So thank you for listening, and keep in mind that we will be doing an update podcast probably in mid-November, and we'll do that after they publish their final list, so we can see how accurate we were here. Meanwhile, keep an eye on us at Soccerphiles Canada. That's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. And our website is on the screen here. But for listeners, it's soccerphiles.captivate.fm. And check our show notes, both on the podcast site and the YouTube site. We've been improving those show notes with good links and stuff like that. So thank you for listening, and we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.